Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Temperatures are rising right across the province, but are you ready to handle the heat? Darius Madavi will have a look at what's in store this weekend. Plus, we'll talk about ways you can keep yourself safe as the temperatures soar. And Brian Minter will be here to give us a lesson in Watering 101 and, of course, answer all of your gardening questions. I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. It is a gorgeous, sunny Friday afternoon, and thank you for joining us here on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. How are you preparing for this weekend's heat? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call us at 1-800-825-5950 or just hit pound 690 on your cell. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And as the temperatures continue to rise across the province, it's the first real taste of summer weather that we've had so far this year. And to give us all the details of what to expect this weekend, it is our very own climate and science specialist, Darius Madavi. Hi, Darius.
Hey, Amy.
So what can we expect, right across the province this weekend?
Oh, it's an easy forecast for me. Sunshine, nothing really but sunshine. The slightest chance of some showers tonight in parts of the southeast, but I don't expect to see much precipitation activity at all, really at any time in the near future across BC until we get into probably mid next week. Maybe some places on the north coast, up in the northwest, North Island, start to see temperatures come down a bit. But until then, everybody's above seasonal. Some people more than others. Some places in the interior, 10 to 12 degrees above seasonal. I think we'll see our first 40-degree temperature in BC this week. I would say Kamloops or Osoyoos, those are good places to put your money on to see 40 degrees. Probably by sort of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That seems to be our hottest stretch. But this ridge of high pressure that's building in. So California right now has a heat dome that's building in. And so for just as temperatures warm up, as we get hot, we can be thankful we're not in Death Valley, where temperatures are going to be
I'm always thankful for that, Darius.
Getting up to around 50 degrees. But
Wow.
For people tuning in visually, they can hear the ridge of high pressure that's going to be building in over the next few days and really just staying in place for a long period of time. For those who are not watching visually, just know that it's it's going to be hot. That's really all people are seeing. That's going to continue to build in. That keeps us dry. That keeps us hot. We get to sort of the north end of that heat dome. So I know that here especially, the term heat dome is a little bit charged.
Yes.
In this case, I'll mostly stick to the term heat wave. Heat dome really just means that there's basically a lid on the atmosphere that's pushing all that hot air back down every time it warms up.
Right.
It keeps warming up more and more and more. And that's going to continue happening for pretty much the foreseeable future. All the cloud clearing out of BC. I doubt many people will see much cloud at all over the next few days. We have some heat warnings in effect. The entire coast, stretching up from just north of Terrace down to Howe Sound, has heat warnings. The east coast of the island has some heat warnings. Some places will get quite a bit hotter than that. Different parts of BC have different sort of thresholds for what requires a heat warning. And crucially, you need both a really a specific high temperature and low temperature. So for instance, Port Alberni is going to be warmer than places on the east coast of the island this week or this weekend. They're going to hit easily into the 30s, but their low temperatures are staying at around 10 or 11. So they don't meet that sort of 16-degree low threshold to get a heat warning there. Also, the reason we're not seeing a heat warning yet in Kamloops, even though they're going to see temperatures reaching 40 degrees.
I would think you'd want to warn somebody about that, but again,
Yes.
is it just the overnight?
It might be coming. I would say that more heat warnings will probably be on the way. For instance, Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley right now have a special weather statement saying, just so you know, it's going to be really hot in the days. So far, the lows aren't quite there to qualify for a heat warning, but they're likely going to be coming in the days ahead, I would imagine. We'll start to see them this weekend start to pop up, if not today, because it's going to be very difficult heat. As soon as you get 35 degrees or higher, especially if it's humid, you start to see less. The fans aren't as good at cooling people down because it's just so hot. You can't pull that sweat away. You can't pull that heat away from your body with a fan. So make sure that you have a plan to get somewhere cool if you need to. Make sure your house is well ventilated. It sounds like a silly thing to say, but it always happens somewhere. Don't leave your kids or pets in the car, and that sort of thing. So just be aware of the dangers of heat, because it is the most deadly kind of extreme weather event.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, just mentioning the word heat dome, here after our 2021, it is really charged. And anytime we start talking about these high temperatures, I think a lot of people do get, very worried and sort of start to plan. You mentioned as well the humidity. I've really noticed that this year. It's a lot more humid than it used to be. I've lived on the West Coast my entire life, and it's only been in the last few years that I've really noticed the activity, the humidity. I don't know if that's me reacting to my old age or have we seen more humidity?
I don't have a solid answer for you there. It is the case that, especially in Vancouver, where when we start, or really along the coast here, when we start to see a long stretch of warmer temperatures, which are becoming more common, the surface of the strait starts to warm up a lot more. And when that happens, it evaporates more effectively, especially into hot air. When that happens, the air is now more full of water, and then it can move over land, and it's just more humid because of that. So the warmer the surface of the strait is, the more humid it's going to be. And so as we get into early next week, I expect to see that it'll feel more and more humid. And so the feels like temperature, the humidex, will start to climb more and more. So for instance, yesterday, 2 days ago, it probably felt like 2 degrees warmer with the humidity. Yesterday, 3 degrees. Today, 4 degrees. By the end of this weekend, you're probably adding 5 degrees into what it feels like, 6 degrees maybe even. And then, of course, also the inland factor. So even though if you sort of just look on your weather app, it'll say Vancouver, 25 degrees. That's usually for Vancouver Airport, right on the water. So if you're inland, right now, add sort of 4 or 5 degrees to that. By early next week, probably add 6 degrees to that. So it's going to be, and then the humidex on top of that.
Right.
So feeling like the mid-30s easily for some places inland in Vancouver by early next week. It's going to be a scorcher.
It is going to be a scorcher. Before I let you go, is this sort of the kickoff to a sweltering summer? Is this just, just the normal way things play out and we'll get back to seasonal temperatures? What are we expecting this summer?
Right now, this is, so across Canada,
Do you hate this
sort of
question?
a little bit.
Okay,
Seasonal
sorry.
forecasts are Eastern Canada right now, the Environment Canada sort of summer forecast is that Eastern Canada is 80 to 90% more likely to be above seasonal. Doesn't say how much, doesn't say whether that actually will be, it's just the probability of it. They forecasted the most likely scenario is a normal summer for Vancouver, but that's like with 40% certainty.
Right.
It's 30% chance to be lower, 30% chance to be higher. I don't think that we're going to see, basically it's a wash. We don't really know what's going to happen here in Vancouver. Across BC, it's a very similar story where it's just sort of up in the air. This is definitely an interesting start to summer, to be sure. Not even start. We had a relatively cool June in many places. So sort of turning around from this case, at this point, I'm just going to say that this is a function of the weather pattern that we have over BC. I'm going to reserve my judgment on what the rest of the summer will be, at least for now. But I will say, no end in sight to this heat wave in particular. Okay. There's no sort of defined end date. It's very much up in the air right now. At least until mid next week, the vast majority of BC is going to continue seeing these scorching temperatures. So even though Kamloops is, for instance, is likely going to hit 40 degrees sort of Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, they're still in the very high 30s beyond that point right now. And it remains to be seen when exactly the end of this will be for most of us.
Okay. We're just going to leave it all up in the air. See what happens.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Thank you for coming in. I know
Thanks,
you're
Amy.
busy with heat waves and hurricanes keeping track today, so thank you.
Anytime.
All right. Darius Madavi is our CBC climate and science specialist. And obviously, as Darius explained, this weekend will be much, much warmer than what we've been experiencing so far this year with those temperatures just soaring. Could get even up to the 40s for the Kamloops area. So we want to hear from you. What questions do you have about preparing for this weekend's heat, and how are you already preparing? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now is Dr. David McVey. He is a public health physician with BC Centre for Disease Control Environmental Health Services. Hi, doctor. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So obviously, temperatures are expected to reach levels that they have not reached, they're not expected to reach the levels they reached in the summer of 2021 when we experienced the heat dome. But this hotter weather is expected to last until at least mid next week. Has that sort of public awareness of heat-related illnesses changed since we experienced that heat dome, or are people a bit more aware and preparing?
Yeah, there definitely is more awareness among the public. Even events like this in the past might have gone a little under the radar before 2021. Certainly, we're not going to see temperatures like that at all, but I think there's much more recognition that any degree of elevated temperatures up towards those heat warning thresholds does have impact on people's health.
Mhm.
And so you hear about it in the news, you hear people talking about it, thinking about it, and getting ready for it. So yeah, there definitely is more preparation amongst the public, which is really great.
What are some of your, I guess, biggest concerns, though, as we're heading into this weekend? After a very cool June, we haven't really had a chance to really acclimatize to any heat. It'll just be here. What are some of your key concerns, though, for people as we head through the next several days?
Those are definitely good points that the first heat event of the summer is typically one that can be a little bit more risky than you might think just from looking at the temperatures alone. And
Okay.
you kind of hit those points there that it's because people just aren't as used to it yet. So your body gets more used to it. Your body can physically become more able to deal with heat, but also the behavior is a big part of it. The first, as summer kind of rolls out, people start getting their air conditions set up and they get their blinds working again, their fans are set up and whatnot. And we haven't had the really warm weather that prompts people to do that. And so the first one of the summer, it is, we're not anywhere near those heat emergency
No.
thresholds. But as you've been saying, it's going to be a longer heat event stretching into next week. So we just want to make sure that everybody is ready for it. Everybody's prepared, even though it's the first one of the year. And, we're already into June. And so we did have a cooler summer. And so we just want to make people I'm sure people are aware and ready for this one as it unfolds.
What are some of the signs of any heat-related illnesses, I guess, that people should be looking out for, in themselves? And also, I guess, in the people that are around them, especially children.
hmm So your body has to work to stay cool.
Hmm.
All the different parts of your body, they work in a pretty narrow temperature range, and so your body works very hard to stay in that narrow temperature range. So early on, your body is working extra hard. Your heart is pumping. Your kidneys are working extra hard, and all those things go to stress and strain your body. So in the early stages, when you're starting to feel that heat and your body is experiencing the impacts of it, you'll feel more fatigued. You'll feel more cramps in your legs, muscles. You may feel a bit of a headache. You may feel nauseated or even vomit. Those are signs that your body is beginning to feel that heat.
Hmm.
And then the things to really watch out for are signs that your body is no longer able to cope with the temperatures and is no longer able to cool off. And so those would be things like changes in your level of consciousness, so fainting, for example, or being confused, or being unable to answer questions properly, losing coordination, or particularly having pains in your chest, your heart beginning to beat very quickly. Those are signs that your body's no longer coping and you need to seek medical attention.
And I'm just going to take time to read an email from one of our audience members. Lenora writes, "Test for dog walking temperatures. Go outside and lay your palm flat on the pavement. Leave it there for about 5 seconds. Hot hand. It's too hot to walk your dear dog. I often hose my old dog down before his pee walks and keep them very short." Thank you for that, Lenora, because I think that's an important part that pets can also be greatly impacted by the heat. What should people be perhaps aware of in terms of the animals that they consider members of their family?
Well, I'm not an expert on
Fair
animal health,
enough.
but I think the same principles apply. That you want to kind of look out for those signs and symptoms that your animal is maybe feeling the heat, and so if it's more tired than normal, if it's not as excited about going out to play, those are signs that should cool off. And then again, if it's passing out or fainting, vomiting, those are signs that it needs some definite help. But the point about the feet is a very good one, and that's something that generally, people don't. We're not out walking on asphalt without
Mhm.
shoes on. But if you fall or if you sit on concrete or asphalt, you do need to watch out for those high temperatures on that, particularly with older people, children who just may not notice exactly what's happening.
Right. If you do want to join our conversation, of course, you can call us here at 1 800 825 5950 604 669 3733. You can also email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Doctor, I want to ask you about the more vulnerable members of our society. And of course, that's the elderly or perhaps people that are mentally struggling with mental illness or homelessness, how does the heat impact them?
That's a really important point. And I think, when I think about people who are vulnerable to heat and these heat events, I think about it in sort of two groups or two buckets, you might say. One is the social or environmental factors. And so that is, what is the home living situation like? Are people able to have access to air conditioning, fans, windows that open well and get some air moving through? Is it on the upper level of a home? Does it have access to a cooler basement? So it's sort of those, is it on a tree-lined shady street, or is it out just in the direct sunlight? Really importantly, are people socially connected? Do they have people in their lives, family, friends, that are going to check up on them and see how they're doing? So there's that aspect of it. And then there's a physical, individual medical aspect of it. You mentioned elderly, also conditions of the heart or the lungs or the kidneys that might make it harder for your body to cope with the heat. You mentioned mental health. Those are very important also. And then those things overlap and they intersect. So we know that people with mental health problems, mental health challenges, for example, may be more likely to have poor housing and don't have access to air conditioning. So they intersect in ways that amplify the risk of just the medical portion, just the environmental portion. They're overlapping and intersecting. So those are groups. They are people that we need to be very, very cautious and conscious of. And one message that I really hope if people hear from our segment today is that if there's somebody in your neighborhood, in your life, that has some of those factors, is living in an older home on the upper level, and they don't have an air conditioner that's working, and they've got a bit of a heart condition, check up on them. Go out to them today even and say, there's some heat coming. Are you ready? Are you prepared? Can I help out? I'm going to check on you a couple times a day over this heat event. That can make such a big difference.
And that's an incredibly important point. Don't wait until it's a dire situation. Go check on them as we know this heat is arriving and make sure they are prepared. Just going to take a quick call now from Jillian in Port Alberni. Hi, Jillian.
Hello, welcome. Hello from the hotspot of Vancouver
Oh,
Island.
Port Alberni, yes. And what are you seeing people doing to sort of get ready for this weekend's heat?
Well, it's more what I'm doing.
Oh,
something
okay.
I learned while I was overseas, and it applies to, as your guest was just saying, people who are living in older homes with no aircon, apartments with no aircon. Something you can do that in my home makes a 5-degree difference, and that is I make curtains out of space blankets. Because a cloth curtain allows the infrared to penetrate, and the infrared, of course, is where the heat is. Right. Even that thin mylar foil will reflect a lot of the infrared out. You need a roll of masking tape, a pair of scissors.
Oh, I believe that we've lost Jillian, but that was incredibly valuable information. And Dr. V, this is all the time that we have today, but I thank you so much for joining us just to help everybody stay safe for the weekend.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Take care. Dr. David McVey is a public health physician with BC CDC Environmental Health Services. It is 12:24, and this is BC Today. For much of BC, it has been a rather cold, dull, and wet June, but for many, this weekend's heat will be a welcome change.
I'm loving it. I'm going to take my little boogie board out, be out in the water.
We can't wait for this weekend to come. Yeah, it'll be wonderful. Finally, hey?
June was pretty rough, so we're thankful the sun is here.
I feel totally warm. I feel the opposite of my wife, but it won't be the first time. And I really welcome this really hot weather that's coming.
It's warm, but it's got a nice cool breeze, so you're not dealing with all that humid temperatures, and it's very comfortable to travel around and not be super sweaty and have all your clothes sticking to you.
I'm happy that it's warm outside and stuff, because then it's funner to you can go in the water things and stuff.
Definitely getting a little bit worried and hearing rumors about drought and not wanting to use my hose as much as the summers in the past. We'll have a pool and fill the pool, and then that's maybe all you get for the day.
Oh, we're so excited to be out of the parks and meeting with friends and eating snacks.
It's not too hot as long as you are under a tree or just having a picnic here with some friends, so it's okay, it's fine.
It's very late, but I'm excited it's finally here. heat wave's coming. I'm excited.
I'm a desert girl, so I like the hot temperatures. I'm looking forward to it, but we have a way to cool down, so I feel for those who don't.
And that, of course, was CBC's Michelle Morton getting out there and checking in on people. And yes, of course, many people are anticipating and a bit excited for the summer weather ahead. But it is very important that you stay safe, you stay hydrated, and you keep that sunscreen on as we experience this first heat wave of the summer. And it is Friday, and of course, that means BC Today's gardening columnist, Brian Minter, is here to take all of your gardening questions. As always, you can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or you just hit pound 690 on your cell. Email your questions, bctoday@cbc.ca. Hello, Brian.
Hey, hi. And, it's really important, your messaging about folks, especially who don't have the best conditions to live in this heat, and plants. I'd love to talk about how to look after our plants getting enough water. And they can't move. They can't go indoors. They're
It is true.
stuck to be able to get the sun. And how we water is so very, very important. Water is now a very precious resource. We have to think about how we use it, when we use it, and just thinking a little bit differently in terms of, watering. First of all, if we possibly can do it in the morning when the temperature's on the rise. That way, any plant makes the most advantage of all the moisture we have. It takes full advantage. Watering in the evening, we forget that plants transpire a lot of moisture away. So a lot of it is wasted in that particular time. The other thing is how we water. Essentially, sprinklers, not the best thing. It does waste a lot of water. Hand watering, drip systems are really great. And soaker hoses are amazing because you can run a soaker hose along the drip line to the plants, and they get the water down to the roots. Very efficient use of it. So those are kind of important things. And the whole thing about lawns, is very, very important. Being a spokesperson for Fire Smart, in areas where wildflowers are an issue, if you're in forested areas and so on, remember it's the embers that are a problem. They can travel to 2 kilometers ahead of a fire. So essentially keeping your lawn green, all it takes is 1 inch of water per week to keep your lawn, depending on many circumstances, of course, the type of soil and so on. But if you can get in the morning, when your water restrictions allow, 1 inch of water per week, will essentially keep your lawn a lot safer as well. And don't forget, lawns help cool our environment and our neighborhoods. That's very, very important. But the bigger issue too, so many of our trees, they're the ones that helping cool us in our cities. The canopy cover in every city is important right now. So many of our urban forestry folks in every community are looking at getting more trees, getting it up there. They need water, and they need water around the drip line of the tree, and they need water even once a week. A thorough, deep water that penetrates into the roots is really all, within our water restrictions, that is really crucial. We look at the hedging cedars at the edge of summer. So many are dying off in the middle of the hedge by simply doing a little prep in terms of making sure that they're thoroughly watered, and that is important. And one big one too, already so many folks are having it. We have our squash in our gardens, and zucchini in particular, a lot of our cucumbers right now. And guess what? Getting white mildew all over them right now. And that's because we're watering the foliage. So keep the water off the leaves. You don't need to water as much, but water below the ground, and you'll avoid that from happening. There's so many things about water we don't know, but it really is important to do it in the morning if you possibly can. When you water thoroughly and deeply, not so often, because that allows roots to come up to the surface as opposed to going deeper. And whenever you can, our precious trees. And remember, our hanging baskets and planters, don't overwater. Give them enough to get through the day, and it'll make a huge difference. So, and by the way, don't be fooled by the plants. Sometimes when we have a sudden bit of hot weather, the plants will wilt. You think, oh my gosh, it's dry. It's not dry. What it is the heat is causing it to wilt, not the moisture. So be a little bit cautious. Always check things firstly, because too much watering is sometimes worse than not enough. So those are little things that really important to think about as we go into these next few days.
All right, we are going to break for the news. We'll come back to you in just a few minutes. And I think of you every time I put down my soaker hose, because you recommended that last summer, and I immediately took your advice to heart.
Oh, thank you, Amy.
This is BC Today on CBC. We're on Radio 1, CBC TV, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC, and also YouTube at CBC Vancouver and on the CBC News app. The CBC News with Robert Zimmerman is next.
Good afternoon. BC Hydro is planning to spend more than $3 billion on capital projects to upgrade and expand the electricity grid on Vancouver Island. Energy Minister Josie Osborne says the projects will create thousands of jobs over the next decade. The spending is part of Hydro's updated 10-year capital plan. Police say a man in his 20s is dead after cliff jumping near North Vancouver's Lynn Canyon Suspension Bridge. RCMP say the man was with friends Wednesday when he jumped at Twin Falls. Investigators say he didn't know how to swim and hadn't jumped off a cliff before. And workers at Harrison Hot Springs Resort have walked off the job. They are holding 3-day strike action after bargaining broke off yesterday. They are asking for higher wages and highlighting workload issues. And now the forecast: high temperatures in the 30s are expected in many parts of the province into next week. Heat warnings and weather statements are in place for Vancouver Island, as well as sections of the north, central, and south coasts. Elsewhere on the north coast this afternoon, sunny with a high of 16, highs reaching 25 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, mainly sunny with a high of 24, highs from 28 to 32 with sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, sunny with a high of 31. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs up to 28 inland. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. I hope you stay safe and cool this weekend. And we will have lots more on today's top stories on the afternoon shows in your region. Here in Metro Vancouver, here's what's coming up on the coast.
Hi there, Amy. Belpuri here, sitting in for Gloria Makarenko. Well, we have quite a Friday ready for our listeners. The Rolling Stones will play in Vancouver, and you won't believe who is going to join us in studio. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Okay, before anybody has a bit of a heart attack, we're talking about tribute artists. They are going to the show, and they will join us in studio first. Also, television director Michael Spiller has worked on shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Modern Family, Sex and the City, Scrubs, and so many others. He will be in town for some workshops at the Vancouver Film Festival. First, he'll drop by our studio. Also, the executive director of Hogan's Alley Society will join us in studio. She will talk about Black Community Land Trust. She's just returned from a trip to the southern United States to learn about how they can be used towards housing security. So we have lots coming up for a Friday afternoon. On the Coast starts at 3 o'clock.
Thank you so much, Belle. Sounds like a great show. And get your questions in for Brian Minter. Call us here, 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or email us on the coast at cbc.ca. And of course, ahead on the coast, on the brain. So you want to email us today with your questions for Brian Minter and bctoday@cbc.ca. And of course, our gardening columnist, Brian Minter, is here to take all your questions about all things gardening. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Brian, I think a lot of people are going to be wondering about what to do with their gardens now that we're into this warm weather. We're going to take a call from Willie in Vancouver. Hi, Willie. Hi, Willie. Hi, what's your question for Brian today?
I've got a bunch of fruit trees, mainly pear and apple trees that this has happened to, and I've been trimming them and pruning them regularly in the fall. And this year, I don't know if I gave it a harder prune than normal, but it was pretty basic prune. And they're just covered in sucker branches this year. And I don't know if I should cut them off now or wait till the fall. There's a lot of them, and I don't want to, take away from the fruit growing.
Good. Willie, that's a perfect question. I couldn't have set this up better. I've just written an article in the Vancouver Sun for next week on summer pruning. It's more important than winter pruning, to be very frank. And yeah, because what we're doing right now, quite frankly, is wasting growth because these are all branches you're probably going to cut out later. Let's cut them out right now. Basically, three things you want to keep in mind, Willie, and this is such a good question. Number one is we want sunlight to penetrate in the center of the tree. So taking the center out, opening it up to allow air and sunlight to get in. So thinning it out a bit so you've got that good airflow, because as the fruit ripens, we can get mildew and all sorts of things happening out. So thinning it out a little bit is very important. And then because we get so much growth, a lot of it's simply not useful. It's not going to bear branches, or we're going to have too many branches out there. So basically either cutting them out, but this is a little thing I've learned over the years. I don't take them right off the major stem where they come. I count out about two separate little, like knuckles on a finger. They're called nodes on a plant. And those nodes often can produce spurs or develop a bud. So I cut two nodes out, and that gives me potential for more fruit to develop in. But the one thing when we are pruning and thinning it out, Willie, is leave some branches around the fruit. It's protecting it, because with the weather we're having right now, I know what's going to happen. We're going to get sun scald on pears and apples and different types of fruits, because suddenly we take the protection away from the branches, and then the fruit is exposed to that hot sun. So leaving a bit around the branches where the fruit is very, very important. Thinning it out, opening it up, and it's the best pruning you could possibly do right now, Willie.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I've done pretty good pruning on it, so
good.
It's well open and everything, but it's just all these little thin suckers that came up this year. Could I take those down to the
take them
base?
Take them right back. But sometimes if it's on a major branch, I leave a couple of nodes. Because those little guys will turn into fruit bearing branches, and if you cut them back hard right now. So great time to do it right now for all fruit trees, including peaches as well.
Thank you so much for that question, Willie. Hope that helped. We'll take a call now from Margaret on Denman Island. Hi, Margaret. I believe you've got a question about your tulips and irises.
Hi, Brian. I have grown very successfully the last couple of seasons because I didn't have any deer-safe area with a bed. So I had a lot of tulips that did very well in big planter tubs, black plastic tubs. Some of them are 3 gallon, some of them are 6 or 7 gallon. And they did very, very nicely this spring. There were a few bearded irises and some Dutch irises in those tubs. What I'm wondering is where the leaves are totally dead and died back and the stems, I've cut all that back. So I now have tubs with dirt and bulbs, nothing much to see. And I'm wondering, is it important to water those over the summer, or should I just leave them and let them dry out? What's the best thing to do with those? I have not had success before lifting bulbs after they're finished, whether gladiolus or anything, and storing them over the winter. I don't seem to have the right temperature and humidity or a good storage place. I tried 2 or 3 times. So they're in the tubs, and I'm just wondering, do I have to water those or just leave them and let them dry right out?
Yeah, Margaret, that's a very good question. And you know what? My only concern is you have some iris in amongst the tulips, right?
There's one great big bearded iris that I'm not sure how he got in there, but yes, and he's still got leaves on. I cut his stem back, but yes, there was one big bearded iris with the tulips, and then there are Dutch irises in a separate place. That tulips were at one end. There's a big raised planter box, and tulips were at one end and Dutch irises at the other that I'd forgotten I'd planted. Actually, they came up much later.
Yeah, and you know the bottom line is two things. Number one, do let the soil completely become dry. Let it dry up, and I would put them in the shade. I wouldn't leave them in the hot sun. Put them in the shade, basically to stay where they are. And you know, once we get into the autumn again, the iris as well, because they're really one of the spring bulbs we plant in the fall. So essentially, let them dry up, leave them where they are, and they will start regenerating themselves in the late fall. They'll start to grow and start that whole process if you can possibly do that. The iris, however, it does need some moisture. Because we don't really harvest those or lift those until we get into August sometime. But essentially, the other ones, let them dry up. That's a really good question. And the sooner you can do that, the better.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I will move all those tubs probably this weekend. That will be the job with a hand from my husband. Some of them are too heavy for me to lift. So perfect. Thank you so much.
Good luck. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Margaret. And stay cool and don't let your husband get overheated in this weekend's weather. We've got a call now from Ray in Richmond. Hello, Ray. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, hi. Good afternoon.
What is your question for Brian Minter today?
Yeah, I got the patches in my grass that it seems to be spreading, and the grass blades are yellow at the top, and I'm wondering if that's the bugs underneath the ground that are chewing on roots?
Yeah, not at this time of year, Ray. It's a very good question. And remember, because of grubs being such an issue right now, we had this discussion quite a few weeks ago on this program, and we're going to deal with it in late August, going into September. There is one particular company that has what is called a grub out, which is BTK. It's a bacteria spray that is far more effective. So don't worry about it now. That we'll worry about. But on the patches right now that are going yellow, is just the grass, Ray, that's going yellow? That just completely going all of a sudden yellow? Everything, every type of grass in that area?
The grass blades. Now it's take a good close look here. I don't know what kind of grass. I can't tell the difference. But the bottom of the blade is green, but the top half or more is yellow with some green still in it. But the bottom, like I say, is green, and then halfway up it starts turning yellow. Yeah. Okay. Have you fed your lawn this spring? No, I don't do that anymore. Oh, okay. I mean, seriously, there are some time-release fertilizers, and with time-release fertilizers, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States does certify that they're actually okay for the soil without getting into water tables and so on. So if that's a concern, but I would consider doing that in those areas, even those areas that you're having a bit of difficulty, but slow release, time release fertilizer. And Ray, the other thing I want you to do is mow your lawn as low as you possibly can. Lawns are water wasters to a degree if they're kept too long. So lower your blades on your lawnmower, low in a different direction, get it as low, it'll conserve more water in your soil. But other than giving those spots a little extra moisture and putting some time-release fertilizer and mowing low, Ray, those are the three things you can do to help get that lawn turned around. But the grubs won't be a problem until next year. So basically, those are the three issues I think you want to watch, Ray. Oh, that's good information. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks so much for calling in, Ray. Brian, I want to read a couple of emails that we've received. This one from Matt, and he writes, I listened to your advice and wrapped my raspberry canes over my fencing wire this year versus topping them at 5 feet or so like previous years. My raspberries are definitely not as nice and plump this year. The differences are really just this and the weather in June. Can you comment if topping the raspberries may result in plumper if fewer raspberries?
Yeah, well, actually, I did the same thing to mine and again, but the thing is I gave them sea soil, to be very frank, to get them a little extra nutrient. And I did give them a little bit of nutrient, something like a 10, 15, 19. And of course, it depends on the variety. But I think perhaps a little feed would be the issue. The only thing by letting them grow a little bit longer, Matt, is the fact that it gives you more berries over a longer period of time. That's the advantage of doing that. So I think, honestly, it's just a bit of nutrient and a bit of organic matter in that soil. And of course, raspberries, when it gets dry like that, would like a bit of moisture down there too. But but cutting it back or leaving it the same shouldn't affect the size of the berries or the plumpness. So it just, we have to do a couple of things to work on that, Matt, and that'd be great.
All right, Matt, I hope that helped you. I'll read one other email as well. Jean writes, I live in a condo in Mission. Yesterday, I bought a female, let me try to pronounce this, Actinidia columicta at your store?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Can you let us know about planting in this hot weather? I hesitated to plant it yesterday because of the hot sun. It will be planted in a large pot. I think a lot of people are worrying about, how to handle planting in this weather this weekend.
We run across that all the time. If you can plant in the evening. And I always tell folks, this is a very common question. It's a great question. I said, do you think the plant is happy in a hot little pot that's baking every day, or the plant to be happier sitting in the ground where it gets the roots out in the nice cool soil? So definitely plant. That's a great thing. And plant in the evening, so it has at least 12 or 14 hours of time to get acclimatized to the new location. And if you keep it watered, and it'll be fine. With the columicta actinidia, and by the way, Amy did a great job of pronunciation, by the way, you want to get the male and the female. They both produce small edible fruits, which are great, but not bragging about males here or not, but the males have the beautiful foliage. They start white and they go to a pink foliage. The males have the spectacular foliage. The females have the wonderful flowers. So you get both with the male and the female. Okay.
All right. We'll get a call now from Kelly in Victoria. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for calling in today.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, of course. What's your question for Brian?
I have a mature black walnut tree up in the Comox Valley. It's probably close to 50 years old, and it's quite large. I've had it pruned a few times by just tree companies, and I've looked online to try and figure out, is there a proper way to prune trees, but it doesn't seem to work very well. I'm just looking for any insight Brian can possibly offer. I don't want to get rid of it, but it's close enough to my house that I do have to manage it pretty actively.
Yeah. Kelly, interesting. For some strange reason, walnuts want to be pruned in the summertime, not in the winter. They tend to bleed a lot when you do that. So that's just one little thing to bear in mind when you do your pruning. They do it in the summer and not in extreme heat. Of course, that's really the one thing about it. And I will mention one thing. Many years ago, I had a gentleman who ordered black walnuts, like 50 or 100 or 1,000, I guess. It was some large number. He wanted to grow them for the wood for his grandchildren to benefit from. And so they're invaluable in terms of a wood, of a precious tree. So if you are thinking about, sometime that you want to take it out, it is a valuable tree, to be very frank with you. But in the meantime, they are perfect shade trees. They're wonderful trees. I love them to bits. They don't have the best walnuts, of course, because they're too hard. But other than that, summer pruning, and keep it as long as you can because they're spectacular trees.
There you go, Kelly. Hope that helps. We'll take another. Oh, sorry. Have a good weekend.
Just thanks. You too. Cheers.
And Anne in Tawasin, what is your question today for Brian Minter?
Oh, hi, Brian and Amy. Yeah, I've got an Italian plum tree, and I'm pretty sure the problem is aphids, those sticky puddles on the ground underneath it. And I'm just wondering if I should be, is it going to affect the fruit crop? It's just loaded with plums.
Yeah, good. And there's a lot of issues with the Italian plums. We got a lot of rain in May, and that caused some shot hole fungus on the trees and a number of issues as well. And a lot of folks, Anne, are telling me that their trees are really full of aphis right now. So go and check out the aphis, because that's where your sticky, sooty material or that drippy material is coming from. That's basically aphis. Yeah. So if you don't mind, do a couple things. Is it quite a large tree or smaller or manageable?
No, it's a fairly large tree, I'd say.
Yeah, okay. I would put my finger over the garden hose, of course, when we can, do watering. And I would get out there and I would spray as many aphis off the tree as you possibly can. Hose them off. Their natural predators will start coming around. but on a regular basis, if they're getting out there, because they are going to get into the fruit over time, and they do take their toll on the tree. But just spray it off with water. And if you want to stay organic, there's a product called Trounce, which is basically fatty soaps that is very effective on aphis as well. But do take a look at that. In the meantime, spray off as much as you can, and that should help a lot with the plum. And here's another very important, and you bring a point up, around the drip line of the tree. This is so important. Get some water now, because when we get sudden hot weather, unless we get moisture in our trees, what will happen is the tree will drop a lot of fruit. It's usually called June fruit drop, and it'll be July fruit drop now. But apparently, water the drip line thoroughly and deeply of all our fruit trees, and that'll save a lot of fruit that would normally drop off this time of year. So just a little tip that's important.
Okay, super. Thanks a million.
Thanks so much
You're welcome.
calling in. And of course, we do still have a few minutes left with our Brian Minter, our BC Today gardening columnist. So call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We'll also read out your emails. So email us bctoday@cbc.ca. We will take a call now from Susan up in Vernon. Hi, Susan. I believe you're asking about your tomato plants.
Yes, Brian, I have a couple of tomato plants on my balcony. They're in full sun most of the day, and I'm wondering how I can protect them from this heat. Every time I look out, it looks to me like they're wilting already, and I've just watered them.
Yeah.
So is there anything I can do to protect the tomato plants from excessive sun and heat?
Yeah, very, very good question. You know, as I mentioned earlier in the program, they can't move. They're subject to everything that happens to them. But if you can't move them back or push the container back and it's exposed to full sun, during the hottest part of the day, between 11 and 3, when the sun is the most intense, if you could go to some of your garden places out there, and something that's selling a lot right now is shade cloth. Shade cloth we put over patios, shade cloth we put over greenhouses. It's about a 55% shade. You don't need a lot, but if you can get, just put some stakes in around your tomatoes, taller stakes, and put a piece of the shade cloth on, that'll take away the intensity of the sun, but at the same time allow the plant to grow. And that'll make a big difference.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, but it's about 50% is the one you want to get, which most garden places have. And but it'll allow the nice thing about it, it'll allow the plant to grow beautifully at the same time, protecting from the super hot sun.
Yes, definitely. I've already got two little tomatoes off of it.
Oh,
good. Oh, one more thing, and if I can, get a little bit of lime, a small handful of lime, and we got to put some lime around our tomatoes right now because of the deficiency of calcium that shows up a little bit later where we get blossom end rot. So all of us, a little bit of lime around our tomatoes now will help them as we go into the next part of the season. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Good luck with your tomatoes. Arthur, you're calling us from Shuswap Lake. What's your question for Brian?
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Large acreage, 2 acres in grass. Of course, in the old days, we had weed and feed. Haven't been able to use that product in too long. Got an invasive species in our lawn. We've tried mowing it right down to putting green size for weeks. But it's a yellow capped little flower. Looks like a clover. We've done some research on it. I think they call it black cap something or other. Just wondering, what can we do maybe to control this thing? It's taken over everything. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and because it's an invasive species, I think sometimes we have a wonderful invasive plant council in British Columbia, but sometimes when we have something that's just out of control that needs to be controlled, we have to do something we normally wouldn't do. And I'd like to suggest to you is where this is a problem is getting some Roundup basically, and again, just so you know, Health Canada sent Canadian industry a letter saying that, and according to their research, use as directed, it's safe for Canadians. So you don't want to use it excessively, but where this weed is causing a problem, we do this with other invasive species. Just basically put it on that area when it is green, and that will be your effective control. We don't recommend using it everywhere, obviously, but this is something that we have to take seriously And I think that I know the Invasive Plants Council would back me up on this in terms of getting control. So keep that in mind, Arthur. I think that's very important.
All right, Arthur, thank you so much for that call. We've got time now to talk to Camilla in Victoria. Hi, Camilla.
Hello, and thank you for this lovely program.
Well, you are more than welcome. It's always lovely to have Brian here. What is your question for him?
For 23 out of 24 years, I've had a stunning, very large wisteria.
Oh, beautiful.
Plant, common variety, purple, but always purple. All of a sudden, for the first time with no previous warning, it produced dozens and dozens and dozens, and almost entirely, like by this, it's so large, by probably about 100, white, raggedy looking blossoms.
Oh, no.
Like they looked skinny and pathetic and white. They were so white, I took photographs. And it's not, I have a white wisteria. It wasn't plump and healthy like my actual white wisteria. It just looked sad and sickly, and the leaves at this point in time look healthy.
Okay, Camille, that's it happens more regularly than I think we would imagine. Two things it could be. Now, I don't know if you have a grafted variety, and most varieties are grafted today. If we've got an understock, a shoot coming up from below the ground where the understock could be white. They do graft onto wisteria, obviously, so it's an understock. And I would tend to cut it out right away. The other thing is that a virus in the plant can change color. That's new. It's unlikely and not usual, but it does happen. So at the same time, if you don't like it, it's not conducive to what you want in terms of the beauty of the plant, then simply cut it out. Follow those stems back to where they're originating from the main stem. So in other case, I think let's cut it out as best we possibly can, and that should take care of the problem. But okay.
All right. Thank you for that call. And Brian, of course, that's all the time we have for today. But thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the weekend and get to stay cool wherever you are.
Okay. And doing lots of watering too,
yes.
Right? Okay.
In the morning, not
Thanks.
at night. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Amy.
Brian Minter is our BC Today gardening columnist. And that is our show for today. I want to thank you for calling in and for joining the discussion. And of course, you can always email us anytime, bctoday@cbc.ca. And thanks to our team on the show, Alan Regan, Melody Jacobson, George Baker, Greg Kisser, Mark Fairfield, Mel Carter, Eric Pankratz, Amar Pamar, Jill Constantine, Ray Farnott, Megan Zwick, and David Jones. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott. Have a lovely weekend and enjoy the sunshine.